welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. Okay, so that's the door frame end, if you like, and the door completed. I have painted it, I've completely painted it 3 times this week, so it's had a complete coat of primer and it's had 2 coats of the gloss, so this was the end. Obviously if anything's going to go rust, it'll be this. So it's had a really good couple of coats of paint, so hopefully that'll last, it'll last quite well. Now, I did say I was going to make some sort of cross pieces in the door, but to be honest with you, I've decided not to do it for 2 reasons. One, the door's reasonably heavy as it is, so I don't want to make it overly heavy. That was the sort of the main concern for not doing it. And if it does start to sag, what I can do is, because the hinges are bolted on, what I can do is just basically undo the bolts, take the door off, and then I can put some in later if needs be. But to be honest with you, the door's been built for a week or so now, a couple of weeks, and it hasn't sagged yet, so it's unlikely to. So the only things that I've done to it since you last saw it is I've tidied up all of the welds and obviously done all of that and sanded it all down and painted it. But I've also put these little brackets in here. And that basically just stops the door from shutting too far, basically. And there's one at the top there as well. I'll show you when I've got it on the main frame. But the next step is to put this onto the rest of the tunnel. Make sure everything's all square and everything bolts together before we do any more. I'm sure it will do, because this has already been on and off a couple of times before, so I'm sure there'll be no problems there. As soon as I've done that, it's then time to do the net. So the next stage is putting the net over the frame. Okay, so there you go. There's the end on. So it went on pretty easily. To be honest with you, I've just put a couple of nuts just on the top there, they're not on tight, they're just so this doesn't basically come out in any way. And obviously gravity's holding in the bottom plate. But that's basically the first time the whole tunnel's been together. So there's the door end, obviously, and that's the back end, and we've just christened the door. I've actually walked through it yet, so there's the lock and doing it, and we're in. So that's what it looks like from this side. The reason I've got the door opening this way is I always have the door facing which way would it be? North, east, west. Don't ask me why, but I've just always had them opening that way. There was one other thing that I added to it. I'll put this little plate in here. The reason being is it stops that from sort of rattling in the wind. You can see the catches here at the top. That'll stop the door from sort of rattling there. Obviously, the door's still, has got some give in it, but those are just a couple of things I added after I did the last video. So obviously the door's upright, so that's got a reasonably good action on it. And I didn't want to make the door any heavier than that, so that's why I didn't put these cross pieces in. But basically, that's the metal work completely finished on the tunnel. Now there are the odd little bit that I've noticed that. Even though I've put 2 coats on, it's escaped paint, so there is. I just need to go around and just give it just a once over before I take over the allotment. There's like a little bit there, I've noticed. I'm being perhaps a little bit pedantic now, as you can see. Just the end of that there. And for some reason, this one here is starting to go discoloured. I'm not quite sure why. And there's a bit there and a bit there. You can see where the primer's coming through the white bit. So I'm just going to go around and just touch that up. And obviously what I do want to do as well is just put a bit of gloss on the end of these cables here where I welded it, so they'll get a little bit of paint on the end there as well, and on obviously the other end. you can see here there's just some little teeny bits where, you know, when it starts to go rusty, that's a reasonably good sign that you know, that it's you haven't quite caught it with the paint. So I'll just go around and touch that off. Obviously do that in the daylight. Now the one thing I will be doing is when I put it up, where these joints are here, the one thing I'm concerned about is obviously that end's going to be in the ground, and you could potentially get water trapped within this leg if you like. So what I'm going to be doing is, as soon as I've got it up over the allotment, I'm going to be putting some tape around here just to seal that off. So obviously mechanically it'll be held by the pin, but what I'll do is I'll, just in case some water comes running down here, what I want it to do is carry on running down to the ground rather than inside the pipe here. So on all four corners, what I'll do is I'll just put some tape around there. So before I put the netting on, so if any rain comes down, it'll just carry on down onto the floor rather than filling this leg up. So that's basically the tunnel finished. Okay, so this is the net that I'm using. This is basically, it's called debris net. You can buy this on eBay, which is exactly where I got this from, and I got 20 metres of this, which is more than enough to do this tunnel for £16. Now what I'm going to be doing is, because it's only 3 metres in width, what I need to do is sew multiple pieces together to get, you know, all the way over and back down this side. So what I'll be doing is cutting 2 lengths of this, which is obviously the same length as the tunnel, sewing them together, and then that'll go over all the way over down to the other side. And basically I'm aiming to get the join obviously along this pipe along the middle. So first thing to do, the best tip I can give you is always cut off another kind of 6 inches more than you need, so you know you're not cutting yourself short, because if you can always, this is basically going to be cable tied onto this pipe work, so you can always wrap this round like that and cable tie it on. If you've got too little obviously and it's like this, you know, you're going to be stuck, you're not going to be able to put it around. So what I suggest you do is when you cut it, be generous, always cut off, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 inches more than you need, and be confident you've got more than enough on there that you can sort of wrap it round, rather than cutting it too short, and then you're going to come into trouble. So what I've done is, just with some pegs, I've used the cables on there as like a kind of like a washing line if you like, and I've just tied them along all the way to the end here. So that's obviously one length. And what I'll do now is cut down, make sure it's square, so I'll get the reel out of the way like that, and then what I'll do is I'll cut down straight down there to make one length, go back again, do another one, and then I'll be able to sew those together. But before I sew them together, as you can see, these are the sort of the joiny bits where you're supposed to put cable ties through there. Now the white cabbage white butterflies will go straight through them holes, so what I'm going to do is just bring them together like that, and then sew along there with a sewing machine, just to close up all those gaps, so there's only the the sort of the green showing. Obviously the black will still be there, but I'll basically sew all of these holes up to stop, to get rid of any holes that butterflies may possibly be able to get through. So what I'll do is I'll just cut these down, and then this evening what I'll do is I'll sew these all together. Now the important thing is obviously when you're sewing these together, what you need to be doing is using nylon, cotton or cord or whatever. Don't use cotton because obviously after a year or so the cotton will rot and it'll all start to fall apart on you. So I'll show you the stuff that I'm about to use, but if you go to any sort of main sewing shop or even online, you will be able to find sort of nylon thread that you'll be able to put through your sewing machine. Nigel from Muddy Boots actually hand sewed this together. I wouldn't recommend that because you're going to be there for a month of Sundays doing that, particularly if you've built one this size. So I'm going to be doing this with a sewing machine to basically just to speed up the process. But I'll show you what the cord looks like now that I'm going to use, the nylon cord, and I'll get cracking with this. So I'll basically cut all these pieces, sew them together, and then I'll show you what it looks like tomorrow when I've got it over the tunnel. Okay, so just to show you what I'm doing, basically I'm sewing up you can see these holes here. That's where basically when it's used as debris net on scaffolding, you put the cable ties through there to tie it onto the scaffolding. But obviously when you're using it as a fruit cage, you don't want these holes in there. So what I'm doing is sewing it. I'm basically just folding it over like that, and then putting a stitch all up there. Now the cotton that I'm using is this stuff, which is as you can see, nylon, and the nylon obviously won't rot when you're in when it's outside. Don't try and use cotton for this because it will rot, and then obviously this will all come undone. So all I'm doing is folding it over where the holes are, like that. So I'm just getting it sort of like that, if you like. And what I suggest you do is you cut the pieces to size before you start sewing it up, because when you've got large pieces of material it's quite difficult. And all you've got to do is basically just feed it through the sewing machine like that, and then just sew along. And then what you'll find is it'll seal all the holes up. So when you open it back up like that, you end up with a piece like that with no holes in it. Also, small dogs like to sit in it. Okay, so I'm just about to cover the door with the net. What I want to do is the net's actually going to go down in between the frame and the hinge here, so that I've got a continual net. So what I need to do is take the door off, put the net on to this frame here, take the door out, put it all onto this frame here, and then put the door back on. And then what that will enable me to do is sandwich the net between the hinge here. So it basically, down in that gap there, is going to be the piece of net which goes this way to the end, and then the piece of net which goes round the hinge and to cover the door. So what I'll do first is take the door off, and then basically put the net in there. Then I can bolt the door back on and then stretch it over. And I'm going to do that in the garden. The reason being is obviously the catch goes through this net, so what I need to do is make a hole in the net to enable this to come through. And what I'm going to do is get a soldering iron and burn or melt the net, should I say, around that area there, so it doesn't fray or anything like that. The other point to note is what I've done is I've drilled some small drain holes in here, and I've also put one at that end there, because I have noticed a bit of water settling inside the pipe. So just to stop that from settling in there and rusting it, I've just drilled, I think they're actually 5mm, 4mm holes. I've drilled 3 there and 1 at the end there. So if any water sitting in the pipe will basically drain out. Okay, so just a quick tip: use some close pegs and just peg the net on the top. Always give yourself plenty, give yourself a good 6 or 7 inches of spare net when you're doing anything. So when you're putting it on, you're not short anywhere. So all I need to do now is, obviously now that's pegged at the top, and I've got a couple of inches at the top spare. What I'm going to do is just pull it down like that, and then basically cut around here straight the way across. Then I know I've got plenty of net to do the door. Then I'll do exactly the same thing. So I've got a piece of net to go from here to that far side. Okay, so now we come to put the net on, and I can't stress enough: take your time. Make sure you got plenty of net, and take your time, and just think about everything as you're putting it on. Now you want the seams that you saw me sewing earlier on facing on the inside, so that no sort of rain catches them and stuff like that. So they're always facing inward. So obviously the piece that there's 2 pieces here. This one here is going to end up on the door, and this one obviously is going to end up across this piece here. Now, obviously the one that's going to go on the door, this is the inside face as we're looking at it now. So the seam needs to be facing towards you. And then obviously on this one here, which is obviously going to be the one that's going to stay on this wall piece, the seam needs to be facing this way, if you like. Now all I've done is used close pegs, holding it in there, and then just one at the top there, holding it in at the top there, as you can see. Now what I've done is made sure that, I'll just get around here, that I've got, this is the one that's going to go on the door, so there's plenty of material there to wrap around the top of the door. Likewise at the bottom there's plenty to wrap around the bottom of the door, and then this one here, this second piece here, there's plenty of material to go around the bottom pole there on the wall and around the top piece of the roof there. So I know I've got plenty all the way around, and if I strap these 2 black lines onto this post here, I know it's all going to be square, and it'll all come true. So what I'm doing to fasten it on is I'm just using these small cable ties, and what I'll do, start at one end, obviously at the top here, and the cable tie, basically these pieces of net, I'll show you here where you can see a bit better, they're going to wrap around like that. Then I'm going to put a cable tie, I'm doing this one-handed, but a cable tie through the hole like that, and then it's going to tie the net on there. Obviously, as you remember, we made a hole every kind of 6 inches or so. So what I'll do, the best way to do this is to start at one end, put a cable tie at the top, and then put a cable tie, pull it nice and taut, not too taut, but reasonably taut. Put one at the top, one at the bottom, and then basically just basically put one in the middle, and then just put the rest in. What I suggest you do, start at the top, put one in there, then at the bottom, put one in the bottom, and then one in the middle, and then just fill the rest in, making sure that the tension on the net is as it should be. You don't want it too tight, but you want it sort of tight enough, if you like. So I'll just put these in, then I'll show you what that looks like then. Okay, so I've got all that cable tied on there, as you can see. What I did was put the one in at the top there, one at the bottom, and then one in the middle, and then basically make sure it's all straight, and then basically stitch it in, making sure that I'm doing it at the same place all the way up and down. So now it's time to put the door back on. So obviously I've got two pieces of net on here. One's going to come kind of this way, and the other one's going to go that way. But the first thing I need to do is put the door back on, and obviously the door goes through, the hinges of the door go through these holes here. So what I need to do is make holes through the net. Now the easiest way to do this is with a soldering iron. Now what a soldering iron will do is just melt the net to make basically a hole for the bolt to go through. Now if you don't do this, what it can do is pull it, and it'll basically possibly make a hole in the net. If you do it with a soldering iron, what it'll do is it'll melt the net and make a nice neat hole through there, and it'll basically stop the net from fraying or anything like that. So let's go an old soldering iron here, which is nice and warm now, so just get that out of there if I can. I'll do this one-handedly. So all you need to do basically is make sure the net's nice and taut. So what I've got is over the other side there, if you can see, I've tied it in with clothes pegs at the top and there and at the bottom to make sure this is nice and reasonably taut, so this is flat against there. And all you need to do is with the soldering iron just put that into the hole, and as you see it'll melt the net like that to make a nice neat hole running through. So what you need to do is do that on all the holes. As you see, with the soldering iron, it only takes a couple of seconds to do it. And what that'll do is it'll effectively melt the net, and it'll stop it from fraying. Now I've done that, because basically what you get is, if I can just show you just close up, can you see how all the little bits are kind of stuck together? That's basically what's going to stop it from fraying. So what I can do now is bolt the door back in, so I'll do that and I'll show you what it looks like afterwards. Okay, so that's with the door back on, and as you can see, basically, if I just open the door you'll be able to see basically the hinges have sandwiched of the net between the two. So obviously that's all now bolted in. The top one's bolted in, and at the bottom as well. So I put all the nuts on, I put some washers on as well, so they're all nice and stainless steel nuts, so they're not going to rust. Now, when I put this top piece over, as you can see, if I'd have put it round the door and round the frame, I would have ended up with this gap here, and potentially a moth or something could have got through that gap. Now when I bring this top piece round, obviously there's no chance, there's no gap here. Obviously there's going to be a gap at the top and at the bottom and that, but obviously you can only do so much. But there's basically, it stops the gap being at this edge here, plus the hinges are not sort of wearing against anything, if you like, so the net's not going to go through. So all I need to do now is detach the outer one, bring it round and attach it to the door, and the best tip I can give you for that is attach the top corner and then attach the bottom corner, and then the rest of it should come true. So basically what you need to do is bring the net round and then stretch it across, attach it at the bottom corner, attached to the top corner, and then the rest of it basically just need to go around, wrap it around and tie it on. And basically what I'm doing is for this, I'm going to put a cable tie all the way around the all the way around this frame, so it's going to go around and then on the other side. Obviously I've got enough room, enough of a gap down here for it to to sort of go through. So I'll do that now and I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. Okay, so that's the door finished. As you can see, there's no gap there because this bit's attached to here, so there's no gap all the way up there. And I've put cable ties all the way around the door. I've used the same soldering iron trick where the catch is, so the catch comes through. I've put a couple of cable ties around there, and then all the way around the bottom as well. So to open the door, so that's what it looks like on the inside. And all I've done is basically just wrap the material around and then put it on. Now, don't go sparingly with the cable ties. I've put sort of one every kind of 6 inches or so. You could potentially put more than that, but what you want is the net to be reasonably taut, but it hasn't got to be like a drum skin. Now, I've got to be honest with you, I'm not over the moon about this part here, so what I may well do is make some kind of plate or something to go there, but that'll most certainly do for now. But I think I'm going to sort of upgrade this somehow by I think what I'll do is make a plate, and then the plate will go through the net, and then bolt on the other side with a pipe clip. I think that's what I'm going to do, but I'll show you that in the coming weeks. But for now, that will most certainly do the job. Most certainly nothing's going to get through there. Now, obviously this piece is attached, but I'm not going to attach that onto the frame until it's over in the allotment. So that is basically it. All I've got to do now is dismantle all of this and take it over the allotment. So I'll do that now. Okay, so during the time I've been making the videos showing you how to do the tunnel, a few people have asked how am I going to move it about. Now it all breaks down into sections, so all of the hoops sort of on clip, if you like. The sides and the backs bolt together, so as soon as you've got the nuts out, you can just sort of pull the bits apart and sort of collapse it down quite quickly. So I've done a really quick video showing me sort of taking it all apart so you can see what that looks like. So this is speeded up, but basically it's about 3.5–4 minutes to take it apart. Okay, to put the frame back together, it takes around sort of 4 or 5 minutes. So I've put a quick video together just showing me putting it back up in the allotment. But this isn't including putting the sort of the nuts and bolts on and all the rest of it. So after this video's over, I've obviously speeded it up because it's about 5 minutes long. But as soon as I've done that, I need to put the nuts in at the top just to tighten that all up, and then obviously there's nuts all down the side to bolt the sort of the gable ends, if you like, where the door is, and the opposite side to the two side pieces. So after all that's up, it probably takes about sort of 20 minutes or so to get it all together. But here's the video clip of me putting the tunnel back up. Okay, so I've got all the bolts in, nice and tight. top and bottom, and the bottom and the other side. I've also put washers on there so I don't sort of ruin the paint. Now, one quick note: where the arch parts meet the straight pipes here, there's a bit of a gap here, and as I explained before, when it rains, water will run down here and potentially into this pipe, filling this pipe with water. So what I've done this one over here already so you can see. But all I've done is just wrap some insulation tape around, as you can see, around there. Now as the water comes down, it'll just run straight off there and down to the floor. So it'll stop the inner this pipe here getting filled on the inside with water. So next bit is obviously to put the net on. Now the only method that I use to put the net on is obviously start at a straight edge and the straight edge is across the bottom. So what I've done is I've put the net on with a cable tie going through every 6 inches or so, nice and tight. And obviously what you want to do is you want to go through the net here, and the net goes all the way around to the other side. You can't really see, but see that black bit there, that's the underneath of the net. So obviously what you want to do is get it so it's going through the net here, because that's where it's going to pull. So when it's finally up in the position it should be in, it'll be kind of like that. So you don't want the net too tight, you want it sort of reasonably, you want it taut, but you don't want it really tight so it's pulling at the net. So now I've got it's in all the way across the bottom. The next thing to do is to put it in right in the middle at the top, so you can get the right tension either, sort of either way, and then just work your way around the arch, and then that's how you get the back bit on. So one final note: always leave yourself, kind of 6 inches or so at the end, because what you want to do is wrap that round this pole here. So always leave yourself plenty of net at the end, and always assume that the net isn't perfectly square as it's been cut, just in case it isn't. And then obviously you only need to worry about to there, because it'll start to taper in from there anyway. But always leave yourself plenty. Now when you do the lengthways, what I always tend to do is start in the middle, get that middle bit in there right, and the middle bit in at the end, and then obviously go down, pull it taut at the bottom, and then tighten at the bottom, and in exactly the same way as this. So when I'm doing the length of it, I'll start in the middle to make sure the middle's in the middle, if you like. So I'll put a cable tie here and a cable tie at the end there above the door, and then just go down either side, pulling it taut and strapping it in along that bottom pole there, and same on this side. What I suggest you do is again put one in the middle, one at each end and one in the middle, and then you know that it's nice and taut, and then sort of put one here, and then sort of work your way out and do the rest. So exactly the same way I did it this way. So I did put one in that corner, pulling it taut, and then one in the middle, and then just fill in the rest in between. Okay, so what I've done now is I've just tied it here, and at the bottom there. Same on the other side. So there's just one in the middle there. There's one, actually I haven't actually put one there yet. One there and one at the bottom. Now, as soon as you've got the rough shape, all you need to do is cut off the excess, and I'll leave about kind of 6 inches of net. So that's going to wrap round like that, and then get tied on. But don't put too many ties on yet, because the same ties that hold the main sort of roof bit, if you like, is also going to be tying around here. So all you need to do is put one every couple of foot or so, sort of going round. Obviously I've got these sticking through, so that's helping me anyway. But you only need one every couple of foot just to hold it in place for now. And then when you put the rest of the roof on, obviously you're going to go through every 6 inches with that to tie it all on, and that'll tie both pieces together. So that's the end piece. Now I've just got to put the roof. Okay, so I'm just tensioning the net over the roof. I'll show you later what it looks like. But all I've done here, this is a brazing rod, so it's a brass rod. I've just sharpened one end so it's like a pin at the end, or like a nail. And what I'm going to do is stitch that through the net. Then I'm going to cable tie this on so it's holding the net all the way along, rather than just in the holes, because I think it'll put too much tension on the net. So I'll show you what it looks like when it's in place afterwards. Okay, so you can see what I'm talking about. Basically this piece of material here comes out round the top, and then it folds in under the door frame there, so obviously as the door shuts on it. So that gives a complete piece of material across the top of the door. Now, as I showed you, I'd got that brass pole or whatever I'd sharpen the end. So I can just show you now. That's fitted, sort of stitched into the net along here, and in doing that, you know, if I didn't have that there, it would only be attached where these cable ties are, and you potentially get it pulling out, because I've put that bar in there along all the way along there. Basically the bar's holding it in place as well, so the bar's cable tied onto here, and the bar's plaited through the thread through the net, so it's holding it in place. So if you've got anything like that where the net's quite tight, it's well worth trying that method to hold it in place. Okay, so the tunnel is pretty much finished. So just to let you know what's got on the edges here. This is where the piece of material comes this way, and from here what I've done is I've sewn up, as you can see there, I've sewn up all the way around to the top. So what I did was, because it was a little bit windy when I was doing it, I basically put the net over the top and just attached it over at that end, and then I put a few cable ties on at this end just to hold it in place. And what I've done is sewn up from the bottom, work my way up and round to the top. I've left the odd cable tie in just to secure it in place, but to be honest with you, I've taken the majority of the cable ties out. I had a little tear in the net there. I don't know if you can see, but all I've done is I've just sewn that up. I've just sort of brought it together with so you can't actually see it now, to be honest with you. But so that's the end. Obviously this end here was the bit I showed you. That goes in and then onto that brass rod. But that's all sewn round, and this is all sewn round here as well, all the way down to the bottom, as you can see, all the way down there. Now, on the inside, I'll just show you. Every 6 inches there's a cable tie, so the mesh goes under like that, and then there's a cable tie going through the mesh onto the pipe. So that's holding that on there. Obviously the net goes all the way around to the bottom side, and they go all the way around at sort of every 6 inches. Now the way I did these, as I explained before, you know, you put one at the end, at both ends, and then one in the middle, and then cut it into quarters so you get it all. So looking at this black bit here, that's got to be absolutely straight, so you can see that is pretty much straight. And then as soon as you've got the one in there, one in there, one in there, what you can do is then is just work your way along and put the rest in. The reason you do that is the net can pull itself backwards and forwards if you're not careful as you're putting the cable ties in. So always put one in at each end so you've got the end right. Then when you put the one in the middle, make sure that you've got the middle and you tie it into the middle, so the middle's then tied in. Then do one between each end in the middle, so basically the quarters, and then you know you can do the rest then, because it should be pretty much in place at that time. So that's the all the way around the bottom, as you can see, all the way around here. There's a cable tie every 6 inches. When I get to the middle, there's a couple of cable ties here, and obviously in the corners there's a couple of cable ties just to perfectly anchor it in. So at the corners, now this will go down slightly. I need to clear the ground a little bit more, and the frame will actually drop down probably about another inch or so. So this sort of gap here will have gone. But what I've done in the corners, I've put a piece of hose pipe. I've slit a piece of hose pipe, put that over the bar here, and then I've driven in a 3-foot stake at this point here, and then cable tied it down. So that's going to stop. If you look here, I can't pull this out. So basically, if the wind does catch it, you know, it won't pull it out of the ground. Now, when I did the other tunnel, this one out here, you can't really see it, but the one that's out there, when I first built that, I built that in the autumn, and it was down the end of the allotment anyway. The wind caught that and pulled it up, and turned it over onto its top, and bent all the pipes and stuff. So it is, I can't stress enough, you know, if you do make a tunnel, always make sure it's perfectly pinned down onto the ground. Now they go into the ground 3 feet, and to be honest with you, I'm actually thinking of getting some longer some longer pins than that, so I might even go down sort of 4 foot or so, or as far down as I can possibly get them. So if the wind does come up here, it doesn't sort of catch the tunnel. Now this tunnel weighs a reasonable amount. Obviously, it's steel pipe. It's not overly heavy, but it has got a reasonable amount of weight to it. So that one that did blow over is a lot lighter frame than this one. But however, the time and effort that I've taken to make this, I'm not going to take the chance of it sort of getting blown over and damaged. But little jobs that I need to finish off, because it's always there's always something to do, isn't there? This is the excess net here. Look, as you can see there, that's where I've sewn it. So I just need to go around now, just trim off, go back to about an inch away from where I've sewn it, and trim off all this excess, because that's not going to. That's basically surplus to requirements. The cables, I need to tighten the cables. Now, as you can see, if I pull that, you can see the roof going into place. So what I need to do is wait for the. I'm just leaving the net now, just to relax. Now, when you're using fabric or anything like this, what you need to do is give it a bit of time just to relax and find its place, as it were. So as soon as that's all sort of got where it needs to be, I'm going to tighten these cables up a little bit more to bring, to make this all go out and not be, quite as sort of flappy as it is at the moment. But that'll be done in the next week or so. Obviously, all the corners are tied in. I don't think I'm going to put a tie in at this point here, like a pin going down and tying it in. But what I would suggest, the suggestion I've got, is most certainly put either a bit of plastic or a bit of hose pipe between your pin and your paintwork, because what you don't want to do is start scratching the paintwork, because obviously it'll start to rust at that point. So this part here, just coming back to here, this was done in exactly the same way. So a piece of net, cable tied up in exactly the same way as I did the other side down there. That's tied into there, and then obviously stretched over, sewn all the way around. Again, I need to cut off this excess, so I'll just go in an inch or so and cut that round when I get 2 minutes. But that's pretty much the tunnel done. So that's basically what it looks like. So we've now got a nice new tunnel. It makes the other one look a little old and tired now, to be honest with you, but it's 24 foot long, and it's 11.5 foot wide. So it's a reasonable size. Obviously, I can grow plenty of things in here. Now what I'm going to do is basically just dig over the inside by hand. One sort of safety warning: don't try and rotivate with a petrol rotavator anyway inside a tunnel like this, because the harmful gases like carbon monoxide will build up. And I found at my own expense, it doesn't take long, and you can really hurt yourself. So don't try and rotivate in one of these. Rotivate the ground and then move it onto the ground, but don't rotivate inside, because of the fumes. And then what I'll do is I'll put some wood chip up the middle as the path, and then I can prepare this ready for the brassicas and everything else to go in. So that's pretty much it. There are a few other things I'm going to do. I've already mentioned them before. But the door, where the catch is here, I'm not overly happy with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a piece of metal to cover that, which will bolt onto the pipework there, and just cover that, just to stop that from fraying. Also, that can shut like that, and I'm worried that that's going to slowly but surely damage the net there. So what I may well do is also put a plate there, just to protect the net there, so it doesn't sort of get frayed over time. But obviously that's the door mechanism all done. So all I need to do is, there's a little bit of stitching left over in that far corner there, just to finish that off. But apart from that, that's pretty much the tunnel finished. Okay, so now the tunnel finished, I just want to sort of quickly go through a few sort of bits and bobs. The tunnel, how much does it cost? Well, I've had to sit down and think about it. Obviously, all the pipework came to me for nothing, because that was those were the Harris fence panels that I managed to salvage. The curved parts are an old trampoline that my kids used to have, and the door frame's been made out of was an old bed, I think, originally, and the actual bit in the middle was an old bench out of a greenhouse that I made when I made that probably about 20-25 years ago. So from a materials point of view, it hasn't cost me anything. All of the metal that's been used on there has been salvaged basically for nothing. The net cost £16, and the net came from eBay. So if you go on eBay, if you want any of that net, if you put in debris net, as in DEBRIS, which is used on scaffolding, so it might be called scaffolding debris net. That's the green net. It does come in, it comes in an orange colour as well, but I thought green would be better. But that was £16 for a piece that was 3 metres wide and 20 metres long. That wasn't quite enough to do this size of tunnel, so I did have to use a bit that I had left over from doing the first one. So luckily, you know, I had enough to finish it off. But it was pretty much enough to do it, to be honest with you. You know, there was only just the door basically I needed some additional material for. Everything else really that's kind of cost money has been the sort of the welding materials and stuff like that. So I would say the welding wire gas and the angle grinder cutting discs altogether have cost around, I'd say, probably £10. So all in all, the tunnels cost £26, which I think, you know, is really good. Obviously, you know, from a time point of view, I've probably spent 45 hours building it, but it's something I enjoy doing, and I've really enjoyed doing it. And you know, if you build it over the winter like I've done, exactly like I did the wind, what do you call it, the wind thing last winter. You know, it's something that you can do. I don't know, you know, even if you've got 10 minutes, you can go up and have just a quick 10-minute go at it, or you know, if you've got a spare hour here and there. So it's not something that you know, you can do it as and when you've got the time to do it. And you know, so it's a nice little project that you can do over the winter. You know, if you're considering it yourself. But yeah, I've enjoyed building it, and you know, I don't think you'd be able to buy one quite like that on the market. There are, if you go on eBay, there are quite a few different tunnels, but the structures are reasonably sort of flimsy, I think. Most certainly in comparison to that. I'm not saying that they're okay for the job, but you know, that's a lot more robust. And if I was to move this, all I've got to do is just lift it up and pull it. It'll all stay in one piece. Where I think the ones that you get on the internet, if you know, you'd have to dismantle them and then reassemble them somewhere else. So you know, they're not quite as rigid as this. So yeah, so that's the tunnel. I hope you've enjoyed the episodes we're showing you how to do it and all the rest of it. Obviously, if you do have any comments or questions, please put them down below, and I'll always get back to you. And I'll see you on the next episode of Jim's Allotment Garden.